Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're doing something really exciting. We're taking a massive set of behavioral data and translating it into a clear, actionable executive playbook tailored specifically for you, the energy policymakers and sector leaders in Somalia. We're going to dig into the exact mechanisms that can actually accelerate the transition from expensive, polluting fossil fuels to a sustainable, clean energy future.
So, what really drives a household to flip the switch to renewable energy? It's literally the million-dollar question for anyone working in the region's energy sector. And as we're going to see, the answer challenges everything we usually assume about adoption just being a dollars and cents issue. Human behavior is so much more complex than that.
Here's our roadmap for today's briefing. 1. Somalia's energy crossroads. 2. The psychology of adoption. 3. The surprising cost myth. 4. Social influence and attitude. 5. Environmental awareness as strategy. And 6. The policymaker's playbook. Section 1. Somalia's energy crossroads. Understanding the current landscape.
Right now, we are looking at a pretty stark contrast. On one hand, you've got this heavy, everyday reliance on informal diesel grids plus traditional biomass like firewood and charcoal. And we all know the severe toll that takes on the environment. But on the other hand, we are sitting on an absolute goldmine of untapped potential. We're talking around 3,000 hours of sunshine every single year, with 5 to 7 kilowatt hours per square meter of solar radiation hitting the ground daily. The sheer scale of what solar could achieve here is just staggering.
Section 2. The psychology of adoption, beyond the economics. Now, the researchers behind the data we're looking at today used a really fascinating framework called the theory of planned behavior, and they adapted it specifically for the Somali context. It basically draws a map of exactly how personal beliefs, environmental concerns, and everyday societal norms all funnel down into a consumer's actual intention to adopt renewables, which ultimately determines their willingness to pay for it.
Just to make sure we're all on the same page, the theory of planned behavior is a psychological model that says, hey, human behavior isn't random. It's actually driven by 3 core things: your personal attitude, subjective norms, and your perceived behavioral control. So the absolutely crucial point here is that if we want to change energy consumption behavior, getting households off those loud diesel generators and onto clean solar, we absolutely have to shift those underlying psychological inputs first.
Section 3. The surprising cost myth, dismantling assumptions about affordability. Okay, this next finding is a complete paradigm shift. It actively busts the myth that household budgets are the main roadblock to clean energy in Somalia. The standard assumption, right, is always that high upfront installation and battery replacement costs just kill the willingness to pay. But the reality? The data shows clearly that beliefs about the cost of renewable energy have absolutely no significant direct relationship with a household's willingness to pay. None. And the math completely backs this up. With a p-value of 0.109, the study found exactly 0 statistically significant impact here. In energy-constrained environments where formal institutions might be scarce, things like the simple reliability of electricity and deep-rooted trust in your familiar service providers, those factors heavily outweigh the price tag.
Section 4. Social influence and attitude. The true drivers of adoption.
So if cost isn't the main driver, what is? Well, the study points heavily to a concept called subjective norms. Think of this as the social pressure you feel from your friends, your family, and community leaders to do a certain thing. In a tightly knit, collectivist society like Somalia, what your family network or local market players think carries immense weight. Adopting solar isn't just an isolated solo choice, it's a community decision that needs social validation. To put it plainly, if friends and family support renewable energy, households are significantly more likely to pay for it. A positive attitude coupled with robust social support fundamentally shapes that willingness to open the wallet. So, for you as policymakers, this tells us that your next rollout campaign absolutely has to target entire communities, not just the isolated consumer. And the complex structural model proves this quantitatively. Consumer intention acts like a massive amplifier. Essentially, if someone is already sort of thinking about making the switch, strong social backing from their peers is the spark that completely seals the deal. It significantly multiplies the positive effects of their personal attitude and those social norms right into final adoption.
Section 5. Environmental awareness as strategy. Leveraging climate concern.
Now, this is where things get really interesting for strategy. It turns out that environmental concern is one of the absolute strongest predictors of renewable energy adoption in Somali households. People genuinely care deeply about local environmental degradation and climate change. It is a massive, highly significant motivator for them to ditch traditional, polluting biomass. They are literally willing to vote with their wallets to protect their environment.
When you roll all of these psychological factors up together, the environmental concern, those subjective norms, perceived behavioral control, and personal attitude, the model actually explains a very impressive 42.8% of the total variance in a consumer's willingness to pay. In the world of behavioral modeling, that is a highly significant number. It highlights just how incredibly effective these psychological levers really are.
Section 6. The Policymaker's Playbook. Actionable Steps for Energy Leaders.
All right, let's turn all this data into your playbook. Your strategy should zero in on these 4 actionable steps. First up, implement a tiered licensing framework for private energy service providers. Second, you want to launch community-oriented energy cooperatives to leverage those powerful social norms we talked about. Third, design rigorous public environmental awareness campaigns. And lastly, introduce direct subsidies or tax rebate schemes to help ease that initial transition.
And here is a brilliant example of perceived behavioral control in action. In Somalia, giving people control means leaning into the systems they already know and trust. By empowering consumers with flexible, incremental pay-as-you-go financing through familiar mobile money platforms like Sahal and EVC Plus, you instantly increase their perceived control. It makes making the leap to renewables highly accessible even for households that might lack formal credit.
So here is your definitive 3-step sequence for deployment. Step 1. Launch environmental awareness campaigns to build up that initial motivation. Step 2. Secure strong endorsements from community leaders to establish positive subjective norms. And Step 3. Roll out that mobile pay-as-you-go financing to give them perceived behavioral control. By sequencing your policy exactly like this, you are perfectly targeting the psychological drivers identified in the data.
I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on as you head into your next planning session. Will your next energy policy focus solely on the nuts and bolts of the physical grid, or will you focus equally on the psychology of the people who actually use it? Because as you design the future of Somalia's sustainable energy landscape, remember this: the most powerful energy transition always happens in the mind first. Thanks for joining me for this explainer,